Alright guys, so this is going to be the succession skill points rundown. I'm just going to tell you what you need, what you don't need, what to lock, etc. But anyways, yeah, let's go ahead and get into the skill points. It's going to make this hopefully not too long. So first things first, Dark Split. Maxed out, fuck it, why not? You don't really use this ever unless you're trying to fucking troll, go to like, I don't know, some imp camp. When you're just fucking around, you could just sit there and auto attack shit to death. Sure, go for it. This is the one thing you kind of max on every class, even though you don't use it on most classes. Well, some classes do. This one you don't, but why not? It's there. Next is the Flow of Darkness. This is your buff, your evasion buff. If you don't get the second one, Flow of Darkness 2, you're going to stay stuck at the plus 9% evasion rate. You're going to want the plus 15. It's better, why not? It's something you could do periodically to get your evasion rate up. As a Sorc, that's kind of key. So you do want this. It's not necessary. You can stay with the first one for a while until you have extra fucking points to spare. Then go for the second one, but it is pretty optimal to have the second one. This buff is nice. This should already be fucking obvious. Never have evasion fucking on. If you do, you just might be autistic. You can never actually duel properly, grind properly with this on, especially when you use your iframe, Nightcrow. This will fuck your shit up into evasion roll instead of iframing, and you're just gonna look like a fucking monkey going around tumbling like a fucking spaz. This shit's unprotected, it's bad. Always have this shit locked, bread and butter. Darkbound, you should have this plus 5 magic AP. Why not? Easy. Backstep, right? This darkness release does the backstep, it also does the forward step. So the way I can kind of describe this ability is you do need this, yes, because you can actually put this in your combos with said down smash and knockdowns. The problem is you don't really actually need this maxed. I have this maxed because obviously I'm 1800 points. On the discussion of how many points you need, don't need, realistically the lowest you need is 13, 1400. A good medium is 15, 1600, and the max is 17, 1800. As you can see, I have 1877 with 34 to spare, and there's literally nothing to level up that's worth my time. So you can easily tell how much you really need at this point. So going on to Darkness Release. Get the absolute if you have the points to spare. If not, don't stress it. It's not a big deal. At least have it up to the second or third. Otherwise, don't worry about it. Rebounding Darkness you do need because it gives you extra distance. The back F when you literally push yourself backwards, it's unsafe. But the distance is nice if you want to use this in your movement. It's there. Not a bad idea. Now this sharp nails you don't ever use, as you can clearly see. I don't have it max. I could right now, but there's no fucking point. You literally just run up to someone and just like fucking scratch them like you're a cat. You never do that unless you're trolling. That's not a legit shit you do PvP or PvE, or not even role playing. I like this ability is useless. It's don't worry about it. Midnight Stinger, the homie, the bread and butter, also known as the movement in succession. You want this all the way up, including the eruption of guilt. Gives you a nice critical hit rate. Everything except the ultimate in absolute, because if you're running absolute you can't do prime, which is succession. You also don't want this, you really don't want this. Why? Because it cancels out of certain situations. You cancel out of dream, you cancel out of certain abilities, it's going to fuck up your tempo. There's gonna be a lot of times you'll want to do a combo, you'll want to do an ability, you'll end up activating Midnight Stinger because of the ultimate, and you'll fuck up. You don't need this. This will fuck you up more than it opens up more shit to fucking activate combos and intricate fucking timings. No, it's gonna fuck you up more often than not. Don't get it. Just worry about all the previous Midnight Stingers into Eruption of Guilt. Simple. Next is the Shield of Darkness. So you want this maxed out obviously because you get plus 13 DP for 300 seconds. This is something nice. You get to activate anytime it's up. You essentially have a constant plus 13 DP. Otherwise it's 5 to 9 to 13. Generally speaking, you can kind of get away with just like leveling up at a time. You don't need to spam this. Early on, you could get away with just sticking on the second one. If you're really starting off, just one is good enough. But eventually, you do want to get the shit max. It's nice. Hotbar it and use the shit when you can. It's a nice little fucking DP buff. Next is the useless shit, probably the most useless ability ever existed in the history of mankind since Teemo. So, Sinister Energy. Okay. This ability you only need up into the second point, Sinister Energy 2. Why? Because once you activate Sinister Energy 2, you are allowed to get the Absolute Darkness and Black Wave. That's it. Do not get the rest. As you can clearly see, I did not because it's fucking garbage. You want the second one. Once you do, it allows you to get into Absolute Darkness and this other bullshit. Don't worry about this one. Once you get into Absolute Darkness, you have the shit max to Absolute. However, you only need at least the first or second one. This is really just like a PvE thing. When I use it, it gives me a really nice crit buff. I have skill add-ons onto it as well. The magic DP minus is pretty nice. Like, there's a lot of good shit about it you want to use. So again, same thing with the darkness release. If you have the points, go for it. If not, don't stress it. Black Wave. Now this is something you actually kind of want to rush because it's something for grinding. You don't necessarily use in PvP. However, this is really, really good in PvE. Max it up all the way into Black Wave 4, and that's it. It gets into the Succession. I'll get into the Succession page later, but I'm trying to keep this on Awakening for now. Pre-Awakening, my bad. Yeah, you want to max this out. Next is going to be Sinister Shadow. You do want this. It's not important, but it's a nice spice. It's, again, just another unsafe movement where you could dash to the right. It gives you plus 30% critical hit rate on the third one. I believe the second one's 24, 18. So you want at least the 24. You don't have to rush this. If you do, great. Now you have a buff for yourself as well as a movement. That actually can be put in between your movement, between iframes and other shit, because yeah, Succession Sorc just so happens to have lesser movement than Awakening, and that's, for the cost of more damage. So you kind of need a little bit of oomph to your movement. So you're using everything you can. Sinister Shadow is one of them. So if you want to squeeze this in your movement and just dash and then iframe, it's possible. Gives you a pre-buff. You do it periodically, so you'll always have this critical hit rate up. Not a bad shit. Don't rush it. Don't stress it. At least get the second one, or at least have the first one, at least. But if you have the points, go for it. This ability, Bloody Contract. Another ability that maybe could have had potential, but unfortunately the stats are just absolute horseshit. If you look at the stats, they literally don't even fucking go up. They don't even increase. It's just there. So just lock this shit. It's a waste of fucking everyone's time. I'm not even gonna explain to you what it does because that's just how you. However, actually, no. Okay, I take it back. The only reason I use this and unlock it, okay, the ability is you hold shift in space and it exchanges, I believe, mana for health. So if I just happen to have pots on me, which I mean I always do, but on the rare occasion I don't, I'm gonna unlock this piece of shit and I'm actually going to salvage all my mana just to get a little bit of HP just to get into fucking RBF or BA because you need full HP for that. That's the only thing I've ever used this for. Otherwise, it's just absolute piss all. Don't use it. Block it. Next is Rushing Crow. Get this up into the second one. Don't get the absolute because you need it for Prime, which is Succession. You need this for your movement. It's a great movement, great iframe, really long. Helps filter out your Q buff. Outside of that, great ability. You want this second, get it to Prime. Bloody Calamity, same shit. You don't want the absolute, you want the Prime. So just get the first one and save enough points for the Prime version. Bloody Calamity is going to be your. So, okay, in Pre-Awakening, it doesn't really do anything. It just does this little AoE. But Prime, though, is where you want to be. So if you can get this first one and somehow rush the second one, again, you'll be in a good spot. I'll talk about that later, but you want the first one, guaranteed. Next is Shards of Darkness. This whole shit is your Q buff. It's basically where your whole shards and all that shit comes from. This is where it comes from. It has your stats where it's plus 8, 14, 20, 20 seconds each, 1, 2, 3 shards. So if you have one, you can only have a max of 10. If you have two, you have a max of 20. You have three, a max of 3. So this is kind of something you do want to rush because having 30 max shards is great, not only for your buff, more shards to play with, but again, it's just something that you're going to need both grinding and PvP. Very convenient. So if you can rush this, you will need the Q buff. It's going to be much easier for you, especially on Succession Sword, to move around. You cannot generally move that well without these shards, so you kind of want this maxed. Sinister Omen, again, an ability that has pretty nasty stats, but the actual like animation and how it actually procs and how it activates is just horse crap. You activate it, it's like you just did like a weird fucking dance, and there's like red shit that like floats around, I guess, the nearest target enemy, and then it pops, and when it does pop, it does minus 30 movement, minus 30 attack speed. It could have been great, but just how long it takes and how dumb it is and how unsafe. This ability has so much potential to be a monster in Succession, but then again, would have got nerfed. So understandable. Don't worry about it. Don't even put an ability in it. It was a fucking. It had hopes and dreams, and then just fucking went downhill. Don't worry about it. Trash. Shard Explosion, something that if you are at a high caliber of Sorc gameplay, you actually incorporate this in your PvP and sometimes PvE. I would say unlock it. If you really don't find yourself using this a lot, then don't unlock it. Don't worry about it. This is just something you could do later on when you do have the skill points. This is not necessary. This is just some high tech fucking cherry on the top. It has hella potential, but if you don't really find yourself using this, don't worry about it. It's not worth the shards. Just uh, don't worry about it. And then we have the spirit absorption. So this is again another cherry on top. You don't have to max this out, but what this does is if a fragment is created, it creates extra. So anytime you gain shards from attacking people, it adds one extra. I think this also adds, yeah, so the first one is every 10 seconds of just being idle. The other one just adds more shards to the shards you're already getting. So this is just like a nice little oomph to your shards of darkness. So getting this is not necessary. However, it's a nice cherry on top. If you have the points, go for it. If not, it's fine. Dark Trade. Now, you do want this actually max, and I'll tell you why. Dark Trade is an ability that takes mana and gives you more shards. It used to take HP, and it still does, I believe, on Awakening, but on Succession they changed it. So it consumes mana 10% to create 30 Fragmented Darkness, Super Armor while you're using it. You use this when you need feel, but you can also use this generally when you just fucking... You need to just do a quick little Q buff. So yeah, Super Armor using the skill. So this ability you're going to need because when you run out of 30 shards, outside of just attacking your opponents and you gain shards that way, it's convenient to just press fucking whatever hotbar you have on it, and it gives you those shards, those 30 maxed. That's nice. It can come in clutch when you need it to fucking pull off some intricate fucking movements. If you need the shards for something else, you can. It's just nice to have. At the very least, have the second one, but if you can clutch the third one, go for it. It's, I promise you, worth your time. It works the same with Shards of Darkness in the sense of first one only gives you 10, second one only gives you 20, third one gives you 30. So it goes the same way with the shards. So anytime you get a second one, you might as well just replicate this in complete order. You have the first one, get the first one, second, get the second, third, get the third. It's just, yeah, how it is. Next is Claw of Darkness, a useless ability you don't use, but is needed to do Dark Flame, so fuck it, right? Go ahead and max this out just so you can get the succession. And even then, you really don't need the succession, honestly. You just need this to be at 1, and that's it. I mean, there's nothing much else to go about it. This ability just sucks ass. You only, once again, use it for Dark Flame. Get it on the second one so you can get Dark Flame. Go up into Ultimate, and then go into Prime. So, Dark Flame, you definitely want this max. Closet Darkness. If you have the points, fuck it, so you can get Succession. Because you do want at least the first one, but outside of that, that's it. Next is going to be your kicks, your Scattering Shadow, your Shadow Kick. So you want the Absolute as well as the Absolute Scattering Shadow. These are good for combos, these are good for just damage. You don't need Shadow Riot, but these two you do need. You will definitely need Absolute Scattering Shadow when it comes to some of the combos that I put in my previous videos or possibly in the future. And just having Absolute Shadow Kick, you don't need, once again, don't stress it if you don't have the points, but it's nice to have a bit more damage and a bit more shit to your Shadow Kick. Otherwise, yeah, don't worry about it. But it's pretty nice. You do definitely want to get Absolute Shadow Kick in the future. Now, Absolute Signs of Agony. How should I go about this one? This is a super, super fucking, like, one of those abilities you only literally max out when you have nothing else to. This is like the last thing you max out simply because you literally don't use this in succession. You have an ability that kind of takes place of it, takes the job. And outside of that, doesn't really do too much for you when you do throw it because it's a super slow ability. It throws this what I call a fucking booger. It's this big ass ball of energy and it fucking just goes at like a super slow rate, hits your opponent and yes, your stuns. It's one of your few stuns. But outside of that, it hitting your opponent is like little to none. If you have extra points, just dump it on absolute. Even I myself don't really use this ability a lot, so it's kind of just sitting there. If and when I do use it, at least it's absolute and it's got the succession benefits. But outside of that, don't stress it. Don't even worry about it. At best, just get the first one and just be done with it. Night Crow, also known as the defining trait of Sorc. This is your iframe. You want this shit maxed out, non-negotiable. If you can rush this shit, get it. Okay, non-negotiable. You need your iframe. Now this is Crow Food, and this ability it's pretty much an add-on to your iframe. If you run out of stamina to use Night Crow, because iframe takes stamina, doesn't take mana, doesn't take shards, it's stamina. If you run out of stamina, it uses one shard to pretty much launch it. So the thing is I don't get to use this often. Why? Because I already have a lot of stamina that I don't often. I say often, there are times I do, and I find ways to just linger in super armors and frontals. If I do run out of stamina, I'm not necessarily going to use Crow Food. I'm just going to better manage my stamina, or I'm going to linger in frontals, armors. I don't really have to use Crow Food. You can put points in this if you do find yourself early on without that much stamina that it could be useful, then go for it. Otherwise, it's just a cherry on top. Not that big of a deal. Storming Crow, this ability. I want to give this ability a lot more credit than it deserves. It's definitely a nasty ability to incorporate on Awakening, but Succession, because of how movement is very, it's finite. Last thing you need is Storming Crow to fuck up your movement. How you activate this is the same way you activate your just iframe going, what, left, right, back, or forward, unless you have the mouse button. If you hold it after that iframe, it does that unsafe ability. Well, it's good on hits, super armor, but if it's not a good hit, you're gonna just fucking front flip in the air like a dumbass, and you're unsafe and you'll get caught. It's super slow when it do it. Not worth it. Don't worry about it. If you want to try to incorporate this and get better at using it on Succession, by all means go for it. But if you get caught in this multiple times trying to move, just lock it. It's not worth it. Crow Flare, a huge ability on Succession. You want to max this out into the third one. Do not get ultimate. Same thing with the Midnight Stinger. If you do, you can E in certain situations and cancel shit, and you'll fuck up your combos. I can guarantee that. Do not get ultimate Crow Flare. Do not get ultimate Stinger. I promise you, that shit is gonna fuck you up more than it's gonna help you. So you want this shit up to the third one and then get prime. B kick. Part of me wants to say it's kind of like a, you don't rush it, but it's not like a cherry on top. It's like in the good medium. You can get up into the second one and be fine, but if you have the points, go for the absolute B kick, because then you get the Succession benefits. Outside of that, though, it's a pretty good ability. It flows well with the Crow. It does its debuffs. It does its job. It's a nice ability. If you can go for absolute B kick, go for it. It's pretty nice. Mark of Shadows, this is your pool, right? This is how you pull mobs in high density shit like Histria, Sakraya, Starzan. Essentially, you only need the second one because the difference between first and second is the first one, it can target 4 people, the second one is 5 people. When you activate this, it's a chain of like dark lightning, black lightning, whatever the fuck you want to call it, and it hits one target, hits another, so it's like kind of like a ricochet. That's how you can aggro and pull mobs to come to you or to a certain spot, and that's essentially how you grind. You want the second one because it gets 5 targets. No need to get the rest. Honestly, I could care less about the rest because once you get it maxed up, or even a few points afterwards, it decreases movement speed. And you really don't want the mobs to have decreased movement speed. Why? Because I want them to come to me. I don't need them dragging their nutsack across the fucking floor trying to come to me. So at best, I could get the third one, which still wouldn't be too much of a difference from the second one. But you definitely don't want the fourth or the rest. Because the movement speed, again, you want the mobs to come to you, not be slower. And then next we have the Shadow Eruption. This one you want to max out completely all the way up into Ultimate so you can get Prime Succession. Ultimate's nice. It acts as a second ability apart from the Succession Shadow Eruption, so it's like 2 different abilities. This one's nice. This is a core ability you need to get. Not only does it help you get the Rabomb Shadow Ignition, but it's also just a good ability on its own. You want this completely, 100%. Abyssal Flame, same shit. This is a very strong ability in Succession. You'll want this shit 100% all the way up into Abyssal Flame 3, then get the Succession. Really good ability. If you can rush this in a convenient way, go for it. Otherwise, yeah, solid ass ability. You need this. Next is Dream of Doom, aka the literal ultimate of Pre-Awakening. If you can rush this 100% all the way up into Eminent, then you're in a good spot. Then get the Succession version. Outside of that, you're good. Just max it out. Simple as that. And then next is just obvious. I mean, if you have the points, max out everything. I'm obviously not 63, so I don't have this shit, but I have everything maxed. You want to have your evasion rate maxed, HP, accuracy rate, monster damage, all the shit maxed. This is just, I don't know, standard shit every class should have. After you have your abilities like Crow Flare, Midnight Stinger, and after you have Calamity and Eruption, you can do your bombs. Your bombs are always going to be this. It will never change. This is fucking universal for all sorts. You want Shadow Ignition and Engulfing Shadow. 100%. So your main 4 abilities in Pre-Awakening is going to be the Shadow Eruption, the Engulfing Shadow, Shadow Ignition, as well as Dream of Doom. That's like your main abilities, aside from Abyssal Flame, because in Succession it's actually good. So these are your skill points you'd want in Pre-Awakening. Now in Succession, this is as simple as this. Me personally, I'm all for going the full version of Succession, just have everything maxed. I mean, this is just self-explanatory. You want everything maxed. Everything in here is pretty much good. Outside of this, this is just garbage. So once you have everything on this list, it allows you to do so much more than you could in Pre-Awakening, because obviously Succession is supposed to be like the second half of your kit. It makes certain abilities you already had in pre-awakening a lot better, gives you more damage. Basically, that's it. The only thing that some people can say that, oh, they would much rather have the pre-awakening version is Midnight Stinger. Some people prefer the OG Midnight Sting, which is the absolute, simply because it's faster. It helps with actually trying to engage on people. It's legitimate shit. And outside of that, some people just prefer it. Now, the reason I stay on Midnight Stinger for Prime, one, you can get increased distance, which is nice. And while you also get increased distance, it periodically increases my Q buff, like my stacks by using shards. By using those two, it's pretty nice. With Succession, you do need abilities that help you move around like badly, like really bad. So to use Stinger as like another ability just to move around is pretty key. For me personally, I need every kind of movement ability I can get on Succession. So therefore, I just prefer Stinger on Prime. That's just that simple. I can get away with using Ultimate if I really wanted to and using it to engage, similarly to how you cut on Awakening, but I've gotten used to just using it the Succession way and just using it as pure movement. I could go in and engage with this. Obviously, if I catch someone on CC, I can still pull up with Midnight Stinger the same way you would on Awakening. Pull up with the shift F fucking, rebomb, this and that bullshit. It still works. It's just using it raw, like just alone to try to catch someone out can be a bit weird. It sometimes goes around your target. It fucking gives them like a number 2 on the side. Like, I don't know why it does this on Succession. On Awakening, it's a lot better on actually trying to catch someone out, but for some reason on Succession, it just doesn't want to. So that's why I got used to just using this purely for movement. If I caught someone out with CC, then I can pull up because it's a not moving target. It'll most likely hit. Sometimes it doesn't, but I don't know. It is what it is. Outside of that, yeah, this is essentially the setup you want on Succession. You want everything max outside of this. And I mean, that's pretty much it for the skill points. So, lastly, real quick, and this is just a preference. I can give you the rundown of this, but what I run is Crow Flare, Bloody Calamity, Dream, as well as the Abyssal Flame, Dark Flame, Absolute Darkness. So with Crow Flare, you want defense and evasion just because it's a defensive ability. Activating this like periodically is gonna on both of these stats, so it's kind of nice to have these every 10 seconds. Defense is nice, you want to be a bit more thick. Evasion, I mean, generally speaking, the rule of thumb with Sorc is the more evasion, the better. So this buff is nice to have. And with Bloody Calamity, you want these two. So instant recovery 30 HP. This is standard. This is something even Awakening ran. You would run the HP gain because it's an AoE that hits a lot of targets. Now it has 3 different hits, 2 AoEs, and then this one long range AoE you just throw at someone. Every time you hit someone, it gains HP like each 3 hits. So that's more HP to gain. On top of that, that's more chances to get the stun. Okay, I know you're thinking like, yo, what the fuck? 6% chance to stun. Like, you're not gonna ever fucking hit that shit. Well, believe it or not, if you faced, me, you would find that this shit is actually not 6%. This shit's technically like fucking 20 or 30. The amount of people I've hit with the stun on my Calamity is actually insane. A lot of people I face will tell you that, yeah, my stun is a bit bullshit. Like, I'm actually RNG carried by the shit. The chance to just stun someone, and I have 3 chances. So if I hit him with the first, second AoE, and then my actual projectile I throw at them, each 3 times it has a chance to stun. I've stunned people on the first, stunned people on the second, stunned it on the big ass red ball. It's happened, and sometimes it's happened almost consistently. Enough to where that 6% feels a bit bullshit. It might be like 20 or 15. So that is just a hidden tech I run. If you want to test it and like feel it, go for it. If you're not RNG carried, then fuck it, just run something else. But for me, I seem to get RNG carried, so the stun goes off more often than not. That's why I run it. Dream of Doom, PvP attack plus 10. It's a nice thing to add more oomph to your damage after you throw it, so that the rest of your shift for 5 seconds can have more damage. Instantly recovers mana is really good. So that was kind of like the yin and yang. You had Bloody Calamity that increases your HP, and then you had Dream that increases your mana. So it's an ability that hits multiple targets. It's kind of like an AoE projectile bullshit. When you hit mobs, it just whoosh increases your mana like fucking to 100%. And even in PvP, it sometimes can help that, even though you already have mana pods, it doesn't matter. Still a nice thing for grinding, especially. Next would be Abyssal Flame, all accuracy plus 4, because anytime you do use it, it's nice to have that up. The only other ability that activates accuracy would be Dark Flame. I'm going to get to this one because it also has it too, but understand this. You activate Dark Flame more often than not, so you have this buff, up for 12 seconds. The one time you don't activate Dark Flame for a hot minute for whatever reason, or let's just say you use Abyssal Flame, it's just nice to have that up because there are times I don't activate Dark Flame. I'll just use Crow Flare or any other ability. Like sometimes I don't feel like using it. So if I do use Abyssal, it'll kind of take place of it. It's like they take turns, but not really. the one time I don't use it, I'll use probably Abyssal, and it'll give me back that +4. So critical hit rate's also nice. You want crit. The name of the game with this class is accuracy, crit, and evasion. That's like the main things you want. So with Dark Flame, that's also, the same thing I have here as well. This is another hidden tech. Again, same shit with the 6%. This 20% chance of down smash for target. I've had this hit, not as often as I thought I would. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I feel like I hit my stun more often than this, but this does hit. For some people that underestimate my frontal, and I just linger in Dark Flame to the full extent where it does the last final fucking down smash, this has 20% chance to do that. So it can catch opponents off guard. It actually helps a lot here and there when you actually need that person to just get down on their ass. Because there are times I try to normally just do Dark Flame and it doesn't work. I tried it with CCs, it just doesn't work. So I hit him with the Dark Flame, and then they fucking just do something unprotected. Boom, just lay him down with the dick. It just happens, and then you can go on from there. It actually helps. Lastly, Absolute Darkness. This is something you predominantly and only really use in PvE. This is like my one PvE ability for Skeletons, whereas everything else is just purely PvP. So this has accuracy, +5, because accuracy is great when you need to use it in grinding, and critical hit rate, on top of its already, great-ass ability for buffs. That critical hit rate is going to be pretty nice. So you definitely want that buff to be added as well. Outside of that, nothing much else to say. This is just a really nice fucking juicy ability. Plus 30% is a lot, so you definitely want that on Absolute Darkness. So yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. Gonna be making videos on combos and other shit in the future, so stay tuned for that. And outside of that, yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.